Hello, so we're going to continue with some examples of truth table problems, and the question we're asking, we want to know, is we're given a formula, and we want to know, is it a tautology or not? That is it true in every situation, or is there a situation, at least one situation, in which it's false? So this time we're going to look at the formula negation P and Q. So this says P is false and Q is true. Okay, so now this table is a little bit bigger. Why? Well, it has more rows. Right? Why is that? Well, we have to look at the common. This formula has two sentence letters in it. It has a sentence letter P and the sentence letter Q, and we have to consider all the possible combinations of truth values for P and Q to know whether or not it's a tautology. And we have to, if it's true when P is true and Q is true, and if it's true when P is true and Q is false, and if it's true when P is false and Q is true, and if it's true when P and Q are both false, then it's true in all the situations. But we have to check all of those because those are all the possible situations. If it's false in any of them, then there's a situation in which it can be false, and then it's not a tautology. So that's why there are these four rows. These are the four different possible ways in which P and Q can be true or false together. They can both be true. P can be true and Q can be false. P can be false and Q can be true, and they can both be false. So to show that it's a tautology, we'd have to show true on each of these lines. So let's start with the first row. So we have, we're on the row where P is true and Q is true. So if P is true, then what's negation P? Is that true or false? Well, okay, when we're looking at negation box, so negation P, when the unnegated thing is true, the negation is false. So P is true, negation P is false. Okay, so now we have a conjunction whose left conjunct negation P is false in the situation we're considering, and whose right conjunct Q is true. So which row are we on of this truth table? We're on the false true row, right? Where we're looking at where our box is negation P, and our circle is Q. So we want to find the situation where box, and we know that not P, i.e. box, is false, and Q, i.e. circle, is true. So we want to find the row where box is false and circle is true, and that's this row. Box is false and circle is true. So we say, okay, when box is false and circle is true, then the conjunction is false. And so negation P and Q is false, as it should make sense that it is. This is a conjunction. One of the conjuncts is false, and so the whole conjunction is false. So, okay, and we didn't get an error message, so we know we've done that correctly. So we know on the first row of this truth table that when P and Q are true, then the formula we're looking at, not P and Q, is false. Now, do we know whether or not this formula is a tautology? Do we need to keep going, or do we know? What do you think? We do know. We know that it's not a tautology, but we just found a situation in which it's false. So we actually don't need to do the rest of the truth table. We already know enough about about our sentence negation P and Q, or our formula negation P and Q, to know that it is not a tautology, because we've already found a situation where it's false, and if it's a tautology, it's true in every situation. So having found this situation in which our formula is false, we know it's not true in every situation, and so we know it's not a tautology, so we can just say no. Now if we check it, it says incomplete. This is not the most helpful error message. What we have to do is we have to check the row where there's an F. We have to say this is the row that shows that our formula is not a tautology, or that this is at least one. This is one of the rows. Maybe there's more than one, but this row anyway does show that the sentence is not a tautology, which it does. It says on this row our formula is false, and so our formula is not a tautology. So we have that row checked. And now let's check it again, and we get the answer correct. So, what are we doing? We're asking the question, is the thing we're looking at a tautology? So what we have to do is we have to find our sentence or formula's truth value on each row. If you find a row where the sentence is false, like we just did, then you're done. You don't need to do any more calculations anyway. You're not quite done with the problem, but you don't need to do any more truth value calculations. You know the sentence is not a tautology. So in the module, you check the box next to a false row, and you choose no. So we've found an F, we checked the box next to the F, and we chose no. If the sentence turns out to be true in every row, like in the first problem we did, then the sentence is a tautology, and you choose yes. And you don't check any rows. The only time you check a row is if you need to say, here's the row where our sentence or formula is false. So in this case, the formula is not a tautology. Okay, let's take a look at 31. And again, I hope you're following along, getting some practice. So this time we have not negation P and Q, but rather the negation of that. So we're saying, is it the case that negation P and Q? No. That's what our whole sentence, our whole formula says. And so we want to know, is that a tautology? All right, well, so let's start. So let's look at the first row. We want to know, is this formula true or false when P is true and Q is false? So let's pop it open. Okay, well, so when P is true, negation P is false. Okay, good. So we have a conjunction which is false and true. So false and true, well, that's this row, false and true, and the conjunction is false. But we're not done yet. We need to get to the very top. We have another negation. So here we're saying the negation of this. So we have the negation of a false sentence, and the negation of with the input is false, the negation is true. And so this is true, right? We're saying the negation says this whole thing, this whole sentence says that's false, right? This part says that other sentence, that one, false. And look, it is false, so the whole thing is true. So, okay, true. Okay, do we know whether or not this is a tautology? We don't. We don't know that it's not a tautology because this is true. For it to be a tautology, all the rows have to be true. So we don't know that it is a tautology because we don't know the truth values of these. On the other hand, we don't know that it's not a tautology because we haven't yet found a row where it's false. So right now, we don't know whether or not it's a tautology. Okay, let's click the next box and continue. All right, so here we have P is true. So again, negation P is going to be false. So now we have false and false. So this is a conjunction, both of whose conjuncts are false. And that's pretty obviously false. And just in case we want to check, we can go to the last row where we have false, false, and the whole thing comes out false. So we'll say false. Okay, so now, is this whole thing true? What's the negation of this? In this situation, on this row of the truth table, this is false, so it's negation. The negation of that is true, right? The negation flips the truth value, so it changes the false to a true. Okay, so now we have true on two rows. Okay, do we know whether or not this sentence is a tautology? Do we know that it is a tautology? No. For it to be a tautology, it has to be true on all rows. Do we know that it's not a tautology? No. For it to be not a tautology, we have to find a row in which it's false. Well, so far, all we found are false rows, but we haven't checked all the rows yet. So we don't know, maybe all the rows are true, but maybe not. We don't know that all the rows are true, so we don't know that it is a tautology. On the other hand, we don't know that there are any false rows, so we don't know that it's not a tautology. So we still don't know, so we have to continue. Let's check this row. Okay, so P is false. So negation P flips the truth value to true. So now we have a conjunction whose left conjunct, so this is the conjunction negation P and Q. Left conjunct is negation P, right conjunct is Q. And so negation P is true here. Q is true in this situation. So we have true and true. So that should be true. And if we're not sure, we look, we're looking at a conjunction. When the left conjunct is true and the right conjunct is true, then the whole conjunction is true. That's the situation we're in. So we'll say true. Okay, so now we have negation of this thing. Well, it's the negation of a true thing. And what does negation do? Negation flips the truth value. So the negation of a true thing becomes false. Okay, do we know whether or not our formula is a tautology? What do you think? We do. We know that it's not a tautology. Once we find at least one row where the formula is false, we know it's not true in all situations. It's false in any situation where P is false and Q is true. And so we know that this is not a tautology. But again, if we check it, it says incomplete. Why is it incomplete? Because when the formula is not a tautology, we have to click a row where the formula is false. It's false on this row. Now if we check it, okay. So what we just did, if we look back, is we showed that negation P is not a tautology, and then we showed that the negation of that is also not a tautology. So we know that the sentence is, the formula is not a tautology, but also its negation is not a tautology. Either of these can be true, Whenever one is true, the other is false. There are situations where one is true and where this one is true and that one is false. And there are situations where this one is true and that one is false. So neither of them are tautologies. Both can be false. Okay, so we did another example where we found a row where the sentence was false. So we said the sentence is not a tautology. And as soon as we got to that false, we said, oh, we're done. We clicked the box to say, here's the row that shows it's not a tautology, and we answered no. Okay, so I'm going to do one more problem, but I'm going to do that in the next video. It's going to be we're going to be working with a bigger sentence. So we'll see what that's like in the next video.